Okay, welcome everyone. We are halfway through our second day of our Finding Joy in Our Journey conference. I'd like to welcome everyone to our presentation today, which is Healing with Self-Care. Our speaker is Jeremy Elledge. He is the founder of New View Healing Solutions. Jeremy received his MSW from the University of Oklahoma in 2005. He is a licensed clinical social worker, a full-time therapist, and a mental health professional. Jeremy is one of the limited number of trauma specialists in Oklahoma that has been trained by the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. He has also directly helped implement for the START model for trauma-informed organizational culture and change, and now working and supervising in an outpatient therapy for kids and families. He also is employed with the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse and provides training across the state for Evolution Foundation. So with that, I would like to welcome Jeremy and turn it over to him for our presentation.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Teresa, for that introduction. Pardon me. It's always kind of hard to hear somebody say nice things about you. So, but I appreciate the nice things that you read there, and appreciate you guys having me to come and visit a little bit today. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys, and Travis is, I believe, do you guys have the slides where you're able to see both me and the presentation? Hopefully that is the case. Okay, thumbs up on that. Very good. And so I want to encourage you guys to ask questions, make comments. I will stop periodically and check with Travis and see what you guys have to say. And if it's terrible, he probably won't tell me because he doesn't want to see. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. We're going to jump right into it because I understand we have an hour and there's lots that we can talk about. So I am proud to just say a word or two about my organization really quickly. I am a full-time mental health professional, and I'm proud of that. I love the work that I do, and I'm really, excited to work with other folks that are supporting families and supporting the work of healing, because that's kind of what we're all about here. And so I do full-time work for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services at Child and Family Services in Norman, and I'm really proud of the work that I get to do there with kids and with families. And so I love my role within the department, but I wanted to do more. So I did start this organization, and we're wrapping up our 4th year. I can't believe it's already been 4 years. And we were, prior to the pandemic, we wanted to make trauma-informed knowledge accessible to our whole state. I was part of one of the first trauma grants in Oklahoma, and that only lasted for 3 years, but the needs of our state are really great. I don't know, most of you guys are probably fellow Okies. And I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and it disturbs me to know that we are, by some measures, #1 in the nation in traumatizing children, #1 in adverse childhood experiences. Some measures have us at #3, but neither's okay. And so I wanted to do more. So I offer mental health professionals their annual training that they need, and we offer that at a reduced rate, and it makes it free to the larger community. Because more than just mental health professionals need to understand trauma, because we're a very injured state. We are a very injured state. We're going to keep it upbeat today, and we're going to talk about lots of positive stuff and how we can feel better and heal and all that. But I think it's important for us to recognize that if we are a very injured state, it can be a very normalized injury. It's an injury that many of us grew up with, or a series of injuries many of us became normalized with. And so there's problems when we have normalized injuries, because oftentimes we just see it as just the way that it is. So anyway, we do train law enforcement and education, educators, teachers, police. We do that, and we're trying to offer training in every single county, every single district, every single department. We want to do that for free. In fact, we're hitting the road later today, heading to Tahlequah. We're going to be spending the day with those gentlemen and ladies tomorrow afternoon, and again in a couple of weeks. So just really excited, because a lot of people recognize the problems that exist in our world, and they're just like, yeah, but what are you going to do? Well, we say something, and you guys say something, And so I appreciate your something, and I appreciate you, supporting our something. We are really proud to be affiliated with the Evolution Foundation. Jeff, Teresa, Robert, we love you guys, and we're just proud to be a part of the good works that you're doing across our state, because it takes good minds and good works coming together, because we've got a lot of work to do in our state. We're making progress in many ways. And so anyway, that's New View. If anyone would like a copy of today's presentation, you're welcome to shoot us an email. Or if you want to know more about us, shoot us an email, info@newviewhealingsolutions.org. And I think we'll have that up on the PowerPoint at some point. But we're really proud of what we're doing. And we're starting our parenting education course for 2022. And we're also offering some limited private therapy. So really proud to be introducing ourselves to you. So let's jump right in and start talking about some stuff. Now, I wanted to keep it light as far as what we talk about is trauma and chronic stress. But I think it is important for us to understand the injury of trauma. And by the way, I wanted to mention, most of you are probably not familiar with me. I am vision impaired. I have lost most of my vision over the past decade or so to a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So I'm not going to tell you that, and not because it relates to trauma or whatever else, but Travis may have to check me a little bit as far as my slides. I wrote these slides, but he may have to help keep me on track a little bit. So, but the great thing, if there's anything great about having a vision impaired presenter, is that I will not read to you my PowerPoints. I'm going to talk to you guys, because I've been thinking a lot about this for a lot of years, and I want to share, and I want to hear from you guys as well, because there's lots of big brains on the internet with us today. So, all right, but trauma and chronic stress, they're not the exact same thing. I think it's important for us to know that. But our emotions are made of chemicals and electrical impulses. And when we get too much of our own feelings, especially the painful, unpleasant ones, then it does harm us. It does leave a lasting impression on our brain and on our body. And if you have one trauma is really easy to notice, because like if you had a car wreck or a bad thing happen to you, then the change came in response to that event, and it was noticeable. A lot of our kids are growing up with trauma after trauma after trauma, so it's been a little bit harder to always connect the dots. And so that often results in something called complex PTSD. And we don't need to get it too much into that right now. Now, chronic stress has very similar impacts on our brain and on our body, but that's just having something really intense to focus on, or maybe having a high stress job or lots of worries. Now, nothing was really, I guess, qualified all the way as traumatic, but chronic stress is experiencing a lot of our brain and body's response to stress, and we kind of adapt to that, and it becomes an injury in itself. And the problem with chronic stress types of injuries is we can't often put our finger on when or how, or what the change necessarily was, because there's lots of little blips on that radar. So anyway, trauma and chronic stress. Now going to the next slide, Travis. This is the one that measurable injury.
These are just the PTSD brains.
Okay, so I'll just show you really quickly. This is your brain on trauma. This is your brain relatively safe in its development, and it is different. And so I think it's important. You can go on to the next slide there, and they can check this out on their own if they want. But I think it's important to know that trauma is an injury. I've often said, when I was a kid, I rode a motorcycle and I got hit by a truck on a motorcycle, and I was pretty injured. And doctors said he might be hard to live with for a little while. He's hurt and immobilized. And, it was a pretty gruesome injury, to be honest with you. And I think I was kind of hard to live with for a while, but my injuries were obvious. They were on the outside. I had a big cast on all the way up to my body. And so those injuries were very measurable ones. But when something changes our brain and our heart and our nervous system in these measurable ways that stress impacts can do, then it's not always noticeable or obvious when someone is injured. And that's relevant and important, because injured people do injured things. And injured behaviors are often understood as bad behavior. And what do you do with bad behavior? You judge it, you punish it, you criticize it. It's almost like society's natural response is, if we can make you feel bad enough about something that's wrong with you, then maybe that'll make you better. And of course, shame makes it really hard to heal. And I think that we know that. So we can see all kinds of measurable instances of how trauma changes our brain, our heart, our nervous system. But the hope is we can heal. We actually can heal. We can't rewind and erase trauma out of our our neurology. But the great thing is we can heal. So we're going to get today into how we can do some of that. So is the next one about emotional intelligence, Travis?
Yes.
It's about emotional intelligence. And so I love discussion. And so I would like to have a working concept of this term, emotional intelligence. It lets people like me kind of sound and feel fancy saying stuff like emotional intelligence, but it's not that sophisticated or complex, I think. What do you guys think about when you think about emotional intelligence? So we can read that off the chat, and Travis, you can let me know if we're getting any comments or feedback or responses. Emotional intelligence, what is that? Okay, cool. So anyway, but I think it's important for us to understand just the basic parts of our brain. I am certainly no neurologist. I'm a social worker. But one of the things I can understand that we have a part of our brain that deals with the smart stuff. That's our cerebral cortex, our smart brain. And then we have a feelings brain. That's our limbic system. And these things kind of do a tug of war sometimes, because we can often know with our smart brain what we ought to do and what the best thing to do is, but our feelings brain says, no, but I want, I feel, I need, I want, and so these things are doing kind of a tug of war a little bit. So it's really important for us to understand these parts of our brain and how to use them, because a lot of people are just kind of letting their brain kind of flap around and do whatever it's going to do. And people will say, that's just what I do, or that's just what I learned, or whatever. And sometimes we do learn some kind of unfortunate ways of handling our emotions or whatever. So have we gotten any responses, Travis, on emotional intelligence? What do you got?
Ability to perceive emotions.
Yeah, perceive emotions. Absolutely. What else?
That's the only one.
Okay, so to perceive, to understand our emotions, to recognize our own feelings and the feelings of others. And so first and foremost, I want to be as scientific as I can about this. Feelings are electrical impulses. They're not good or bad in a scientific, in a sense. Now, some feelings are very unpleasant. Some, to feel angry or sad, to feel scared, these are not pleasant emotions. But the most unpleasant emotions are probably the most key to our survival. We need those capacities, because anger and sadness are trying to help us navigate the world and motivate for different decision making and problem solving, and sadness helps us kind of come to terms with losses and change in our life, and a fear and stress responses. Those are some of the most important. If we didn't get scared when we're supposed to be scared, then we get hurt, because we're supposed to and that emotional capacity helps us react quickly and instinctively without thinking. If you're in danger, you're not thinking about if the new season of your show's coming out on Netflix as you run away. No, what you're doing is you're not even thinking in words. And that's a good capacity that our brain has for us. It's literally speeding you up. In fact, it's kind of like slow motion photography, and I would make that comparison. When you're shooting slow motion photography, the image is slower, but the camera's lens is showing is going more times per second to show you that slower image. The camera's machinery is moving faster inside to show you that slower image. And so that is kind of the case that's happening when we're stressed or scared. Things kind of slow down to help us hopefully react quickly and instinctively enough to save ourselves. So anyone ever been late for work before, and you're hitting every single light, and it seems like everyone in front of you is driving really slow? You had that phenomenon. It may be that others are just driving particularly slow on that day, but your brain's moving faster. And so the world seems slower in those instances when you're feeling a little stress, a little tension. So it's important that we understand our brain and our body. If I say to myself, how do I feel right now? How do I feel, and why do I feel that way? I'm using that top part, the smart part of our brain, to look at the feelings part of my brain and see what it's doing. And evidence shows if I know how I feel and why I feel that way, I'm less likely to let my feelings out in ways that I don't want them to come out. And everybody, all humans, even us therapist types, us alleged experts, allow our feelings out in ways that we don't want them to come out sometimes. And so if I stop and think, how do I feel and why do I feel that way? Then I'm gonna be able to decide what to do. See, remembering those emotional capacities and what they're for. If I'm angry and I'm sad, that's not a wrong way to feel, but a lot of people learn a wrong thing to do with it. So a lot of people say, I shouldn't get mad. No, you sometimes should get mad, but you shouldn't always do what we sometimes do when we get mad, if that makes any sense. So it's important for us to use our feelings for what they're for, because we're not born with capacities that are there to harm us. But I will say this, young brains are like I tell the kids, it's like a brand new laptop or a brand new iPhone or tablet that has no data used or no apps on it yet. And so each experience, our young brain, it's just a vacuum that's taking in data constantly, no matter what. To fill that data space. And so we've got to guard the familiarities. We got to guard the data that's going into these little brains, because that's the only data they have to draw from. If everybody else is providing the cognitive cookies that go into that cognitive cookie jar, then kids, when it comes time to feel their feelings, then they only have those cognitive cookies and examples to pull from. So it's really important for us to be a more emotionally intelligent society. We're regressing in that way. We're becoming more sensitive and reactive to one another, and less thoughtful, and recognizing our feelings and using them for what they're for. So we really need to do that. Tell you guys a real quick funny story before we get into self-care more. My dogs actually helped me understand emotional intelligence in one of the layers that I thought about this. You know, a dog, when you think about how they show excitement or emotion, one of their body parts will probably come to mind pretty quickly, and it's their wagging tail. You know, and I got to thinking about dog anatomy and neurology a little bit, because I'm a nerd and I overthink things. And so, but a dog's tail goes down his spine, and it's an appendage that goes off of his rear end, but his spine is directly connected to his brainstem. So it is hardwired into his limbic system, his emotional brain. So every time a dog shows his feelings, it's happening without a lot of thought in his emotional brain. And he doesn't have a big smart brain to help him say, that's not the thing to do. So when I have a guest that arrive and I have a soda on the table near the door, sometimes dogs get excited, tails get wagging, and Pepsi gets spilled. And I can get frustrated at my dog and say, don't want you to show your emotional behavioral response that way. But they don't understand that. Now humans, we have approximately 16 billion neurons in our cerebral cortex. That's the biggest brain pound for pound in the universe. And so we've got a big, smart brain. And so that means we are the only being that thinks about thinking that we know of. We plan and think ahead, and we can also recognize our tendencies. We can recognize if we've developed a negative way of dealing with our feelings. We can recognize if we had a negative influence or an injury that affected us. And we can recognize, I do that thing, whatever that thing is. I call them human tail wags. We all have that thing or those things that we do that we don't want to do, that we know that we do, but humans can plan for those. And the great thing is we have the ability to influence the ongoing development of our brain. We don't just have to let it unfold as it will. A lot of our growth and development is out of our hands, but people don't realize that we get to choose a lot of this stuff. And that's power. That's power. So anyway, emotional intelligence, it's being smarter about our brain. Kids say, what's that? I said, well, you know what emotions are, right? You know what intelligence is, right? Put them together. We're going to be more intelligent about our feelings, and we're going to use them for what they're for. And part of emotional intelligence is understanding injuries, and it's also understanding the basic things that our body needs. Because there's a lot of people walking around not giving themselves the basics and wondering why they feel poorly. And so let's jump into next. And how are we doing on time? I want to be cognizant of that as well. 12:20. We're doing great then. Okay, so questions or comments thus far?
On the last slide said how we handle and manage emotions, and socialize and connect with emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Gosh, we got smart people here. Absolutely. Those are great comments and questions. And you get it. You get this stuff. So, and I think it's something that each one of us can offer a lesson to the others in our lives, the kids in our lives. Emotions are contagious. And so, there's the quote that we often hear. Gandhi says, be the change that you seek in the world. You can't tell somebody how to do it, but you can show them. You can offer some influence. You can't make somebody treat you a certain way, but you can influence how they interact with you. So anyway, some things to think about. So what's next, Travis?
Doing the opposite of injured.
Yeah.
ICC.
Okay, doing the opposite of injured. So I really should have worked it out where I could have played this clip for you guys, but you guys, some of you got to be Seinfeld fans. I'm a big fan of old Seinfeld and George Costanza. And George Costanza, for those of you that know the show, I won't break it down too intricately, but he was the lovable loser that has always had bad luck and making bad choices, kind of had some bad instincts. And so now I think few of us could compare so closely to George to have so much bad luck and make so many bad choices. And of course, we could do a psychological profile on his parents and why he was the way that he was and whatever else. But he realized one day that, my instincts are bad. I need to do the opposite of what comes natural. And sometimes we need to do that, especially when our instincts come from injury. A lot of our injured behaviors come because we are trying not to feel our injured feelings. Our brain is developed to avoid pain and seek pleasure, and that makes sense, of course. But a lot of the ways that we retract from pain cause us to be, at risk. People with more injuries are going to have more risk for developing negative ways of coping. Whether it's substances or other ways of dealing with things. People with more headaches are going to take more Tylenol. And so that gives us some things that we may need to identify, challenge, and change. That's a little abbreviation that I came up with. I have a book that's coming out, and I'm real excited. One of these days, it may even get out there. But in chapter 8, I talk about identify, challenge, and change. We have to identify the things that we've been through. We have to identify our experiences and how that's contributed to our norms. So much of our human data came from the people we learned from and the people they learned from and the people they learned from. At a certain point, the neat thing about emotional intelligence is we get to start building our own data. And then the more we actively choose to use that data, the more we choose to use our new skills, we can't get the injuries out of our brain, but we can make those new skills more instinctive. And so repetitively changing injured behaviors into healthy behaviors, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. Our initial new coping skills don't always help the most at first. People say, well, it didn't feel better right away, so I quit doing it. Well, it's not just about it being an immediately successful outlet, because few outlets are going to be that. Part of what it is doing is redirecting our neurology, redirecting our attention, our efforts, our energy. It's about doing something else over and over and over again. And so that's what power is. We can't help what happened to us in our younger lives when we had younger brains, but we have a choice to influence the ongoing development of our brain based on what we do. And a lot of people really do just feel like they're kind of along for the ride, just with whatever happens. But we can identify, challenge, and change. When we catch ourselves doing that thing, that tail wag, that whatever that thing is that we do, because we have the 16 billion neurons and we can know what we do and recognize our tendencies and explore those, and we can catch ourselves and we can challenge that. And it's unpleasant, sometimes even painful to change a maladaptive coping skill, but over time it gets easier. And so a lot of you guys are going to be in roles that are going to be able to help people identify, challenge, and change. And you're going to have to support them through those moments that cause them to maybe doubt their challenge and change a little bit, because people get motivated and they want to do better and they want to change. But then a lot of times stress and triggers come back around and then we waver sometimes. Especially when it has to do with substances or whatever. People want to get better, but that addiction or that habit comes calling and pulling on people. And so anyway, identify, challenge, and change. And so I think part of what we have to identify, challenge, and change is the basic ingredients that we put into life. So let's go next, Travis.
Next is self-care, the recipe.
Okay. So what do I have on that slide?
Any forgotten?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, this is about what I would call forgotten fundamentals. You know, they teach you. I remember we did coloring and we did little things about the 4 food groups in school. You guys remember, you know, some of those basic fond old discussions, you know, and the 4 food groups and stuff like that. So we knew a lot about getting our basics in, but somewhere along the way we forget. Somewhere along the way we forget. And so I am a therapist full time, and I teach self-care to mental health professionals, among other professionals. And one of the things that I'm just here to say, as humans, fellow human beings, if you don't make sure that your nourishment, that your sleep, and that your exercise are adequate, you're supposed to feel bad. Maybe I'll say that again. You're supposed to feel like crap if you don't get enough healthy food and hydration, if you don't take steps to kind of manage and have adequate levels of sleep, and if you don't get enough exercise. And also I'll throw in there recreation and having things to look forward to. Once we get past all those youthful ages that you look forward to turning a certain age, then all of a sudden, I think it's important for us to put things on the calendar that we can look forward to. Joy, healthy joy is good for us. It actually makes us more productive in the roles that we want to be good at and functional at and productive. But I want to talk just a little bit about nourishment, sleep, and exercise. Just a little bit, because we say, yeah, I know, I'm supposed to, but whatever. If we don't do them, we're supposed to feel bad. Now, I say it sometimes, I even make this an ethical issue. Many of us are parents. Many of us have jobs that really need our attention and our focus and our efficacy to be good at what we're supposed to be good at. And so we are not as good at the things that we need to be good at. We're not as attentive and focused. We're not as patient. We're more sensitive and irritable. We're more emotional, more depressive symptoms. All kinds of things just relate to not putting the right ingredients in. If you're making a cake, if you put all the wrong stuff in and cook it for the wrong amount of time, you ain't going to be surprised when it comes out of the oven smelling weird and looking funny and lumpy. No, that's the way we're smelling weird and looking lumpy and funny sometimes when we don't take the adequate care of ourselves that we need. And so it's just really important for us to mind that recipe. If we don't have enough hydration and green stuff, in particular, green healthy foods, we see higher rates of depression. Depression comes from lots of different sources, lots of different, developmental things that can happen to contribute to depression. But part of it is not giving our body what it needs. And so, I'm no dietitian or nutritionist or whatever. I'm no diet specialist. And I think that we can still enjoy the foods that we enjoy, but we've got to get enough of the good stuff in there. I also, our body is said to need, the average human body is said to need around 2,000 calories per day. I have no idea how I do on that. I'm not a calorie counter. But did you know that 25% of those calories go right through the brain? And so 25%, 500 of your 2,000 daily are required for your brain. And so think about that. If you have a top fuel race car, you don't put the cheapest, crappiest fuel in it for top performance. And our brain is a really amazing piece of organs or whatever, amazing human structure that we have. So sleep. Now, one thing that can be challenged when we have stress and trauma injuries, our sleep can be affected. And that's problematic because sleep is when our body's restorative processes are most active. That's when we're building back again our immune system, when we're fighting off the viruses and colds and flus and the more significant health risks. Cancer cells exist in the human body. They're there. And so our healthy immune system is constantly at work keeping those kinds of things at bay. And so regular exercise can boost your immune system if you don't have it in your life. If you implement just a normal moderate, healthy exercise routine, 4 to 5 times a week for 30 minutes, you can boost your immune system by as much as 50%. That's significant. That's significant. And what's more, exercise is so key for our emotional health as well. And so I think I have a slide about that. Do I have a slide about exercise specifically? I'm going to look.
Exertion-based.
Yeah, I am going to. I will touch more on that. Is that next?
No.
Okay. So I'll wait. So okay. It's happening live, folks. So anyway, exercise is going to be really, really key. Well, I will say this: daily food is fuel. That gives us energy. And then stress, the human stress response, fight or flight, is actually giving us some extra energy with cortisol and adrenaline that naturally happens in our body. And so now anyone that's got post-traumatic stress, so we got food energy and then daily stress energy that we all kind of get from time to time. And then we've got some stress that's post to a trauma. There's going to be 3 layers of energy. There's a reason why so many kids have hyperactivity, because they're not allowed to move, or they have a lot of stress injuries and without outlet. A lot of the top medical doctors will not just prescribe ADHD meds to a kid without exploring a trauma history and maybe seeing about lifestyle as well, because kids are shown to do so much better on tests right after recess or PE. Why is that? Because they got their wiggles out, and a lot of those injured kids are burning off some of that extra cortisol and adrenaline. So for those of us who have depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress, exercise coming from this alleged expert is going to be more important for you than the average person. Is that fair? Not really, but there can be benefits. You can turn that into something good. So exercise is going to be so key to your emotional and physical health. Let's think about that just once more, because cortisol and adrenaline that are high in our body's active nervous system, when we use that up, it comes down and we increase our calm and our relaxation. What that also does is it produces these natural stuff that helps us feel good and relaxed. Things like dopamine and serotonin and other endorphins and neurotransmitters and things that smart people say to feel smart. But it's the things that we're taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications for. And I've had a number of patients that we could truly get pumped up about their own self-care, and some of them saw less and less need for medications in our capitalist medical market. So, it's not very profitable to help people get well on their own, but it's ethical. And so anyway, and I told you about exercise and then recreation. And so did I miss anything on that slide?
Self-care.
So on the self-care, the ingredients, consider them ingredients, Okay, so I think we covered that well enough. What's next? Is it breathing? Oh, soaking up the sun. I'll just touch on that briefly. I wish I had a little bit of Sheryl Crow in the background right now, make it musical. But in places in the world where there's less sunlight, there are correlations of higher depression. We need the sun to actually use some of the nutrients in our food. Some of the healthy stuff that we get from our food, we don't get as much of it unless we metabolize it using the sun. We're kind of similar to plants in that way. And so getting out and getting some sun is going to be an important thing. And so in these beautiful, globally warm days of Christmas, make the most of that and enjoy some of this sun, this spring-like sun, because it's a proven to be a mood stimulant. And so look at places like Seattle, Washington, and Alaska, where Seattle's got the stormier weather, and they've got a lot of gloomy kind of. I refuse to believe that the higher rates of depression and suicidality are just because of grunge music and Nirvana, Alice in Chains. I don't think that's it. It's the lack of natural sun. And I think in those areas, people have to find ways to kind of offset and supplement those deficits, those deficiencies. because there are parts of the planet that people didn't happen and be as much. And so anyway, soak up the sun, soak up the sun. Comments or questions, Travis?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. What's next?
Next is remember to breathe.
Okay. I had to tie this into trauma and stress because, you know, show me one human being that has no trauma. High five. You know, high five to you. We don't want you to be traumatized, but it seems to be a kind of a common part of the human experience. And so in that regard, it's important for us to kind of recognize how human injuries unfold. And so one of the things, and even people without diagnosable anxiety or stressor related disorders, even people that don't have post-traumatic stress or whatever, you ever notice that you forget to breathe sometimes when you're stressed? So I'm probably getting some digital head nods and thumbs up or whatever, because when we're really focused or when we're really tense about something, we often give ourselves less oxygen. And that can be, of course, problematic because, well, oxygen, you know we need that for the very most basic functions of life, but also we need it for healing. And we need it for relaxation. Our muscles, our heart, all of these processes require larger volumes of oxygen. And so I find it a kind of ironic human response, because in moments where we probably need more oxygen, we actually learn to give ourselves less. And so, but there's something called being mindful, being emotionally intelligent, being aware of our emotional and physical needs that do come quite together. And recognizing that, whoa, I need to breathe. I need to let my shoulders down. Because sometimes you ever notice, sometimes you get those tense, you kind of shoulders are up here by your ears and you're doing that thing and you realize it and you let them down. And before you know it, they're up again. You know, that's an adaptation to stress and to tension. And so we've got to remember some of those basic elements and to give ourselves those mindfully, because we need oxygen in order to calm down and feel better. And so one of the things I talk about this afternoon, I'll tell you guys a little bit later, we're going to be talking about music, because music is a very human thing, and it has been for thousands of years. And so singing is actually producing one of the most natural and healthy types of breathing. When we're little babies, we do this thing called diaphragmatic or belly or abdominal breathing. And that is where we really get rid of most of that carbon dioxide in our lungs and take in more full breaths of oxygen. Somewhere along the way, as smart, fancy, sophisticated adults and even adolescents and kids, we learn to breathe differently somehow. And I believe that's an adaptation to a stressful world. But we can mindfully be aware of our needs, and it gives us a reason to sing, you know, because I coach lots of breathing exercises. I'm a therapist, but sometimes breathing exercises, you know, I'm trying to keep kids engaged. I'm trying to keep them, you know, invested in activities. And believe it or not, kids, well, you know, one of the feelings that I hear from them a lot is boring. You know, and so breathing exercises are sometimes boring. And so what I want to do is involve music, and I call it musical breathing. You know, for us less talented folks, it might not want to call it singing. So anyway, so breathing is very important. I think we've established that. How are we doing on time, brother?
12:40.
12:40. Excellent.
Someone made a comment on the soaking up the sun.
Yeah.
Thing. In a workshop they had yesterday, they were told that Oklahoma, we're not a state that can get the normal volume of vitamin D because we're so far away from the equator.
Is that true?
And said vitamin D is a helpful, healthy way to kickstart lots of healthy parts of our body.
Okay. So did it say that we cannot get it here?
We just get less.
We get less. Okay. I believe that. I believe that. I know we're still getting something. I know we're still getting some good stuff, because I know how I feel if I stay in too long, and then I know how I feel when I get out and get some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but absolutely, I love data. I love data like that. So, and knowing that allows us to be mindful. You know, if we know that, gosh, here in Oklahoma, we get a percentage less than the natural amount, and that may be compromised even more as our atmosphere gets thicker and more polluted. So we're probably getting less of that increasingly, increasingly anyway. So but that allows us to be mindful and stay out an extra few minutes, put on a little sunscreen and get a little more, and I'm no dermatologist either, so do within whatever recommended, qualified people say. But thank you for that comment. Awesome.
Next is getting into coping.
So getting into coping. What do I say about getting into coping, Travis?
Coping to cope.
Oh yeah. So coping is a thing. And so as a therapist, I know lots of kids who can recite 101 unused coping skills. They can tell you all kinds of things that they don't do when it really matters. And so I think we as grown-ups sometimes do that too. We can tell you an appropriate response if we had to discuss our coping skills. But coping skills are a noun. To cope is a verb, and it is something that we should do. And so I think as therapists, sometimes we forget to really teach this skill. And any adult is going to need to be able to help teach coping skills, because as parents, as adults, we can't, not cope effectively with our feelings around kids and then expect them to cope effectively with their feelings. We're pouring data into their brain. And so there's so many reasons. I say that there's at least, 2 reasons to cope, and I just come up with a third reason. The first reason is feeling better. Now, is there a second slide on coping, Travis?
No, it's just
okay. So we'll stay on this one. So feeling relief from our stress, pain, or unwanted emotions is understandable, common sense, and at times very necessary. And now, but also about that functionality thing we were talking about before. When our emotional levels are high, we're not able to be as attentive and focused. We're not able to be as effective in our decision making. We're not able to access our memory and our most complex reasoning processes as readily unless we help ourselves do things that evidence shows will bring down those strong responses in our brain and in our body. It's not wrong to feel them, but sometimes we've got to learn what to do with those things. And so coping's about, feeling better, functioning better. And my third one is because as adults, we are teaching this, whether we realize it or not, and so I do a lot of family therapy with those who will participate, because, as adults, if we're pounding our fists and slamming doors and shouting and doing these kinds of things, it's only natural that that's what we're going to get from the kids. Teaching coping is so very important. I think it's part of our safety planning, and it's a part of our self-care to help ourselves feel better, because we live in a world that's going to give us plenty of triggers, plenty of discouragement, plenty of frustration. So next, please.
Next is the exercise slide.
Okay, so I call it exertion-based catharsis. I don't know if we got any meditators, any people that like to meditate. I like it when I'm able to. I have a busy brain. And so sometimes it's hard for me to just zone into the Zen or whatever, I'm clearly not a yogi master or whatever. And so I call it exertion-based catharsis, though, because sometimes when we're thinking of, when we're moving in step to music, or when we're counting reps, or when we're focused on how our body needs to engage specifically in an activity, we're thinking very focusedly on those things, and we're also not thinking about some things. And I call that mind silence. Sometimes there are, if you have any trauma, sometimes there's these things called intrusive thoughts or memories that we can get into a tendency of having. And so that's a big coping skill for people who need to not think about certain things in moments when their intrusive memories or symptoms are disruptive, painful, and detrimental to our functioning. And so it's really important for us to find ways to achieve some mind silence. Now, I say we have to be careful because avoidant mechanisms and turning off can be a bad habit if we do it too much, even with healthy outlets. But we do need a break from our thoughts and our worries and our feelings sometimes. And so, so the reps, the steps, that is one of the ways that I'm able to achieve some of that mobile meditation and mind silence that I believe that we all do need. And again, exercise is helping manage some of that daily stress. Now, one of the things that I will also say too, most of us do not swing an axe or dig a ditch. A lot of our jobs are more indoors, and we work a lot with our mind as much as we work with our hands and our muscles now, and that's a bit away from kind of the natural origins of our body and our design, our development. And so we're not meant to sit all day. And so I'm doing it to you guys now. So I'm sorry, I'm contributing to your to your gravity, because gravity goes to working on us. And so our spine in itself is like a building whose levels are settling upon itself with all kinds of nerves in between. And so, but one thing that we can do, we've all probably had to go to a chiropractor at one time or another. I have to go more often if I'm not exercising. I have more pain when I'm not exercising, because we keep the muscles along the spinal column firm. We keep the spine off of itself. And so, and of course, all these other benefits, but we age more rapidly, and we also get sick more often too. Just like sleep, exercise is very restorative. It boosts our immune system. So there's lots of real good reasons. And another thing, a neurologist, this guy, I forget what his name is, Robert Amen, I think. Anyway, I'll look it up if I need to get back to anyone on who said it. But a neurologist points out that if you're really stumped with a problem, logistically, you can't like figure it out. You're sitting there at your desk, or your kid's sitting there doing some homework or whatever. Your brain and the blood in that part of the brain is starting to, it's used up its nourishment and its nutrients. And one thing that you've got to do, he says, is get up, get away, and go walk vigorously for 15 or 20 minutes at minimum. And don't think about the problem at all. And when you get back to the problem, one thing that you'll see is one thing that you do when you get up and move around, what do? You increase oxygenation to your blood, and your heart is beating harder, so your more beats per minute is happening. So more oxygenated blood is being circulated to more places in your body, including that part of your brain. It's like a stream that was moving too slow. The water's getting stagnant. We're blowing it out, and the fresh waters are running wild again. And go back and look at that problem again. Go back and look at that problem again. I write and I think, and I'm using my brain a lot, and this helps a lot to come back with a fresh brain. So I call it coming back with a fresh brain. So get up, and this is something that I really encourage employers and employees. Get up and go for a couple of walks a day. Tell them that's part of your safety plan. That's part of your self-care. I do it, and it definitely helps the way I perform in my job, and it keeps me awake sometimes after lunch. But it gets you some mobile meditation, some movement-based catharsis. Because you can really, I've had some of my greatest revelations when I was just thinking about nothing and just letting our nutrients and our blood and our oxygen flow through the brain freely. So questions or comments before we move on?
Somebody said PayPal makes their employees walk so often every single day.
I like that. I mean, I hate the mandatory nature of it. I hate for them to say, you're going to do this, but also I'd love to see it incentivized and say that, you know what, if you'll exercise, you can use this much of your day to do that, because I think it would show and prove to improve productivity in many instances, as well as job satisfaction, because a lot of people want to exercise and do things like that, but then they got kids at home and houses to take care of and food and laundry and life. And so, I happen to know that in the military, that's one of the perks I think you can train on as part of your day. And that needs to be adopted by more industry, I do believe, not only for what it'll do for the individual and the family, but what it'll do for the bottom line. I really believe that.
She said said they have a gym on site as well.
Awesome. Where is this? Do they need it? And do they need a social worker? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But where?
At Paycom.
Paycom. Okay. Right on. Right on. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, because they recognize, and honestly, you know, Paycom, I don't know anything about that. I know it sounds to do with getting people their money, and that's important. But I will say that a lot of these industries, they're not just nobly caring about our well-being. They are seeing that it's better for their bottom line. It's making them more money to take care of their people and let their people take care of themselves. And so, anyway, for those of us that are managers or future managers or CEOs or whatever, remember that taking care of your people takes care of yourself as well, and the mission. So what's next?
Mindful gratitude.
Yeah.
Emotional appreciation.
Okay, what slide number are we on? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so we probably need to move. I don't remember how many.
9 minutes left.
Okay, so mindful gratitude. I'm not going to be one of these people that just says, just think positive, just think happy thoughts. You know, if you can do that and it has a benefit for you, all for it. Now, a lot of people don't come from happy places. A lot of people, their human data is not that. Now, so for those people, I want to teach them how to use their brain to get the best outcomes and the best feelings anyway. And so now we feel about whatever we think about. So thinking about the things that we are thankful for can be quite a coping skill and a way of protecting ourselves, because if we do focus too much on what is wrong in our lives, more so than what we have to do to address it, then it's unhealthy for us. I like the way I said that. But anyway, we can think about what's good in our life, and we will have an emotional response to that. And so, again, not just telling people to think more positively, but going back to that whole brain scan stuff. I'm a brain guy, and I want to know what's happening and why. Somebody tell me just think more positively. I say, why? What's that going to do? You know, so what I want to know is what a little bit is behind it. And that we were talking about the smart brain and our feelings brain, the cerebral cortex and the limbic system. You know, there's no quiz, so we don't have to go over this afterwards. But studies show that when we think optimistic thoughts, when we think positively, or when we challenge the thoughts that don't benefit us, then we're actually more able to access our prefrontal cortex, our smart brain. And when we think negative, pessimistic thoughts, our limbic system is active in the scan. That's the emotional brain. And the emotional brain don't help when we need to solve a problem. It wants what it wants and feels what it feels, but it can't help us out of problems. It just helps motivate, and then it's time for the smart brain to figure out what to do. So it's really thinking more positively, and even mindful gratitude. It really is about being able to access the smartest and best parts of our brain when we need the most. That's all about, you know, kind of what we've been talking about with emotional intelligence and emotionally intelligent self-care. So anyway, mindful gratitude. And I think that we can make a practice on a daily basis of thinking about what's good, so we're not brought down so much by what's bad, because there's plenty of it. And one thing I think we have to watch, our brain and our body, you know, humans are survivors thus far on this planet. So we've had to adapt a lot. And as a very adaptable species, we're around a lot of emotional contagion, a lot of frustration and discouragement. And if the world frustrates you and discourages you enough, you'll start to do it to yourself. And you'll need to be able to find what's good in your life. And you'll need to be able to challenge the thoughts that don't help you. Not because everything's just positive anyway, but so you can think better, feel better, and do better. It's called the cognitive triangle. But anyway, what's next?
Speak it, write it.
Yeah, speak it, write it. I'll just say real quick, there was this lady, my very first patient years ago, this little lady, she would talk as long as you let her. And I remember I would barely say a word. And then she would say, "Oh, thank you. I felt so much better." And I said, "You're welcome?" ? I mean, I cared and I listened, but evidence shows if we find a productive way to verbally process our feelings, it does help us. And so again, back to the brain. I'm thinking, why? Why does that help? Why is talking about feelings? Just talk it out, just talk. So everything, your human experiential data, the things you've gone through in your life, good or bad, they're not stored in words in your brain. They're stored in like videos. And so when you think back to something that you went through, you don't see words going across a page. You see people and things and events happening. And so, but to actually have to put that into words, that information, that human data has to move in your brain to the part of your brain that knows words. And we get something from that. If I tell you guys a story of an experience that I've never shared with anyone before, maybe it's a story I've shared with people many times, but at this time, as it's moving in my brain, I never realized that. I'm learning about the data that exists within my own brain. Isn't that neat? I think that's cool that we can make realizations about what is already within us, but that does require some exploration. So in both in writing and in safe outlets with people, it is proven. That's why therapy can work when it's done and structured in a healthy and positive way. I feel like there are a lot of people in my field, they'll just, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. All right, well, therapy's over then. We have to structure that process and help people know how and why and what might be helpful to kind of look into. So next.
Got 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Plan for stress.
Okay, this will maybe be one of the last ones. Go to the end and see how many there are. What? Okay, so drill for skill, plan for stress. One of the things that we've got to really rehearse and role play and do our skills with the kids and the people we support and with ourselves a lot. And we use them a lot necessarily when we don't need them at first. Because, well, we don't tell the kids, you know what? We haven't had a fire at this school ever. We're just going to quit doing fire drills and wait and see if we have a fire, then figure out what to do. No, when we're stressed out and in a panic and our emotions are high, we're not good at thinking, not good at decision making or problem solving. And so same with tornado drills and all that. We don't do that. So we've got to make these things a little bit automatic in our minds. So when if the time comes, God forbid, we kind of know what to do. And we lay that neurological framework and foundation for these people situations, because tornadoes and fires don't happen often, thank goodness. But our people skills will be no drill. We will need that regularly. And so we've got to help make these a little bit more natural and instinctive. I'm going to be working with some police throughout the state because, police train for 8 hours with verbal de-escalation per year and an average of 130 hours with their guns. You're going to reach for whatever you practice for most. And so we've got to practice these human skills. Our brain and our heart are our most powerful tools. So I don't know if I probably don't got time for anything else.
12:57.
Okay, I got 3 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. What's the last slide? What are we?
There's natural outlets, back to basics, and then do it, then feel it.
Okay, I'm going to talk about do it, then feel it. A lot of people are waiting to feel better, to feel motivated before they get into that better self-care, or they start taking on that project or that goal or that hope or that dream. And I feel like a lot of times we're waiting for motivation that might never come if we don't initiate the project, the goal. Sometimes you got to do what you don't feel like doing in order to feel the way that you do want to feel. And so sometimes, I'm really big into fitness, and that's a big outlet, important outlet for me. And so some days I'm not into it though. Some days I'm not feeling it. And some days it's okay to take a break. But also some days I'm not feeling it and I need to, and I know it. And so I'll make a little deal with myself. All right, go hard for 5 minutes and see if you can find it. And then maybe if I can, then if not, I'll say, go take a nap, go sit down, go do something lazy, less productive. But a lot of times when I get my heart pumping, get my oxygen flowing, a lot of times I change my energy. I change my motivation. And so the thing is, we can do things that do change the way that we feel, and then we do feel like doing it. But a lot of people never experience that initial, oh, okay, I got it now. So it's really, really important to mind the recipe of life, to do it even if you don't feel like it most of the time. Now, we had a saying in our therapy group, a men's group, and I said it's not happening anymore. It was in another community, but I said, guys, when we know what helps us feel better and we don't feel like doing it, what do? And everybody said, we do it anyway. I said, and we'll be glad that we did. Because, the way we want to feel, our health, our life, it's not going to be a magic butterfly that comes and lands on our shoulder. We got to go get it. And that's what I'm trying to get people motivated about, because when I get people motivated about their self-care, they're coming back and they're coping and their better lifestyle. They're coming back and they're saying, I feel better. And I did that. Not me, the therapist, they did it. And it was something they accessed for themselves. That's empowerment. That's healing. And so anyway, I've really enjoyed visiting with you guys today. I'll stick around for a few minutes if there's questions or comments. And if not, I'll be talking again here in a little while about other stuff.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Lots of great information. We have a 30-minute break coming up. And then at 1:30, Jeremy will have another session on music and movement for healing. And then we also have a session with Ann Benson on self-care. Can I also take care of myself? You'll find both of those on your agenda. In the chat, I did post information on your CEUs. And then just a quick reminder that at the end of today, it will actually probably go out tomorrow. Everyone will get a survey about the general conference or retreat. I would ask you to please fill that out, because that helps the CBHN as we're planning for future events. And then it also, if you give us your information, will allow you to be entered into a door prize. So again, thank you guys very much for joining us. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next session.